There's one more concept that I believe we need to really understand. At least have some ideas about lambdas that will be very helpful, especially if we are going to talk about Compose, or we're going to go and explore Android Compose. But even if you're not going to do Android Compose, this concept is really, really interesting and important. This concept that I'm going to be talking about is called trailing lambda. To explain to you what trailing lambda is, well, first of all, we have to understand that you can pass functions as parameters to a function, as you see here. So you see at the top we have fun enhanced message, right? And then we have message as a string, and then we have this fun as parameter. So it is a function that we're passing as a parameter inside of enhanced message function. So this whole function here returns an integer, but that's not that important at this point. So you see then in the body of this function, remember this is not a lambda at the top there at all. It's just a normal function that we're passing a function parameter. And so we then print a message, which we're passing, and then we also print the fun as parameter function there, the contents of it. Notice that, of course, this fun as parameter returns int, not the enhanced message, but the parameter function that is being passed is actually returning an integer. Okay, so how would we call this? It's very simple. We call by saying enhanced message. We pass that message, hello Paulo or hello James. All right, and then you notice something interesting here. And then we have a lambda. How is that even possible? Well, Kotlin allows you to do so because if you put, this is very, very crucial, if you put a function as a parameter, and that function as a parameter is the last thing or last parameter that is being passed, then we can actually invoke a lambda, right? In other words, according to Kotlin convention, if the last parameter of a function is a function in this case, then a lambda expression passed as the corresponding argument can be placed outside the parentheses. If you look at enhanced, when we call it enhanced, we pass in hello Paulo, and outside of the parentheses, we just go ahead and call the lambda and pass another function that will return, because it has returned an integer, because we said the fun as parameter has returned an integer. So we can pass either just a number there. I just chose to pass the add 12 to get 24. So that function we're passing inside of our call here, this lambda, is just could be anything, okay? As long as it returns an integer, because that is the contract we have. Why is this an important concept? Because now this is an important concept again to really understand, is because in Jetpack Compose this is used extensively. So let's go ahead and actually write this same function here so we can actually see how it all works. I think that would be helpful. All right, let's go ahead and do it. So I'm going to create just a normal function, call this enhanced message as such, and we're going to pass a message of type string, and then here is the fun part. We're going to pass here a function. Okay, I'm going to say fun, just to be descriptive, as parameter, like this. And this is going to be, of course, a function that returns, in this case, an integer. Could return nothing, but we're going to go with the integer. All right. So inside here, we're not going to do much. All we're going to do is I'm going to say print ln, and I'm going to pass the message. In fact, let's just put all inside of double quotes and say pass the message we're passing, right, as arguments. And then I'm also going to pass the function as such, because I know this is going to return an integer, so I can actually call it. So this is what we're doing here, calling the function and go from there. So let's make sure, because we're calling this function, let's put that inside of curly braces there. So we actually say we're calling the result that we're getting when we call this fun as parameter. It's returning an int, so we expect to get an int. Okay, so nothing really out of this world. Other than having this fun as parameter passing a function. When we go to call this function, we can say enhanced message, and we're going to pass our message. In this case, I'm going to say hello there, and I could go ahead and pass a function here that would do whatever we want to do. And we could go ahead here and pass the actual function that we said needs to go as a parameter. That's fine, but we're not going to do that because we're going to leverage trailing lambda in Kotlin. That means, which says if the parameter is a function, right, being passed on a function, and is the last parameter, then we don't need to put anything inside of parentheses, meaning we can just go outside of the parentheses, do a lambda like this, or open up the curly braces. Now, one thing you will notice, especially when we're using Android Studio or any IDE, the difference between lambdas and just normal curly braces. You see is that this curly brace here, because it's just a function, normal function, is not as bold as the lambda expression there. Okay, very good. Now we're going to have a problem here because since we're saying fun as parameter and there's our lambda, we have to pass, of course, what it needs to return, which in this case is going to be a number. So I can say 12 and notice life is good. If I run this, we should see 12. Actually, we're going to see hello there, 12. Very cool. Now the beauty here, look at this, because we know we're passing this fun as parameter there. We can call any function as long as it returns what? Yes, an integer. I happen to have the add function. In fact, this add, if I command click, we created a long time ago. It's another lambda. Look at the beauty. So this lambda here, you can see we pass it. These are the types, returns an int, we have the parameters and the body. So we're just adding those two numbers. Very convenient. So now I can say 12 as such, and if I run this, I should see hello 24. Voila. That's very neat. Very, very neat. Okay. And of course I can do all sort of things here. So this is what we call trailing lambda. Remember, for this to work, the function has to have as a parameter, the last parameter has to be a function in this function. This is the requirement. Look, if we wanted, we could also pass something inside of this fun as parameter. Let's say we're going to pass a string like that. Okay, we're going to have a problem because right when you do that, of course, here I'm going to pass something like hey for now. Right when we do that, look what happens. You probably saw this earlier. We have that implicit IT string, which we know that we have access to that. How cool is that? So here I can just say, for instance, print IT like that. If I run this, I'm going to say, hey, there's hey, hello, there 24. Again, this is a very simplistic example, but it really showcases the trailing lambda concept here. You can imagine that you can create a function such as this, a trailing lambda, that will allow you to input some sort of data. And then it will take that data inside here, pass that through another lambda or another function that we call here, and do all sort of things. Okay, so if you continue, this concept you will see happening a lot in Android Jetpack. This concept of trailing lambda, you will find it being used extensively in Jetpack Compose and many other frameworks out there that use Kotlin. So take your time and understand this concept well. And if you don't get it right away, it's okay. But just keep in mind that trailing lambdas are used, and whenever you want a refresher, come back to this video. That will be very helpful to you. Okay, very well. I'll see you next time.